Okay. Ernie, so you became a navigator and you graduated as a lieutenant. Then what happened?
Well, then my immediate first assignment was to a B-24 combat crew who was in training in Casper, Wyoming, and there's where I met the other 9 members. The B-24s had 10 crew members, and we did their training for 4 or 5 weeks. Pilot gets sharp on the airplane and navigation and so on. Then we went to England. We were assigned to England. And we turned out to be lucky. We got assigned to the 93rd Bomb Group, Hardwick, England. Turned out later, didn't find us out to much later, that was the oldest bomb group in England, one with a great reputation. We were assigned there as a crew. And the way they worked it then, you were supposed to fly 30 missions and then you'd finish and come home. I flew my first 15 missions with the pilot then, Lieutenant Justin, and his other crew members. Was incidentally are all gone except one, and I'm in contact with him all the time. He's in Pennsylvania. He's now 92 years old. Anyway, we flew 15 missions. And about that time, I got a broken leg, strictly nothing to do with combat. Outside, they put me in a cast for several weeks, so they took me off the crew. When I come back, they've already got a replacement navigator. And just by accident, and I'm glad you did, because I didn't consider myself that good. I'd get woken up one time in the middle of the night, and it's the chief navigator, board member said, "Hey, Perez, we got a problem. Our lead crew navigator, something's happened to him and he can't fly. And the crew running up the airplane, blah, 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 blah. Think you could go?" You know, sure. So I go. And then out of that, I guess this guy decided, by then I had just to digress a minute, had met the gal that became my wife. And I didn't want to leave England. I didn't care if I wasn't in a hurry to finish. And I said, "Oh yeah. Said, why don't we just keep you as a replacement navigator, only for lead crews? You won't fly much, and it'll be people you don't know. They wake you up at 2 in the morning and tell you, hey, Ramirez is the pilot, and takes off at 8 o'clock. So I flew my next 8 missions. That's when the war ended. And they were all as a lead crew member. 3 or 4 of them were for just a group. A group was 36, 40 aircraft. Then a wing is 3 groups, you know. And then a division is several hundred. And so I got to fly two of them, including were division leads. And I got to fly 400 aircraft leads. And we just went, it's kind of different memories of different war now, because today, or even now, I've got a history book downstairs that for the first time I saw what our losses were. We had big losses, but we didn't know that. When my own sons tell me, "Dad, tell us about the war and all you guys did and how scared you guys were," and that. And I said, we weren't scared. It was just kind of like you didn't know what was going to happen. The loss rate, incidentally, was, the odds were that out of 30 missions toured, 10 of 30 crews would not return home. Not on one day, but all 30 missions. Well, that's 1/3 loss, you know. When they're talking about 6, 7, 8% loss for the other services, it was big. But we didn't sense it, you know. You flew, and when you got down, you found out that Joe Blow got shot down. And so anyway, it was a real, and I flew it till the war ended.
Tell me about, I'm still wondering about, so what was a mission?
A mission?
Give me an example of a few of the missions.
Every mission we flew was they were to strategic targets in Germany, and they were to big targets. For example, I flew 2 of my 30 missions were to Berlin, to Kassel, Cologne. They were just bombing missions, and in those days, when it's hard for people today to imagine that the Air Force was putting up 1,000 airplanes in a day, 1,000 bombers. Now those bombers of that day only carried, I don't know, 5 or 600-pound bombs. Today even fighters carry that much, and we had in those days, one of the big losses was that we had 10 crew members, whereas like the bomber I flew later in peacetime, we were only 3 crew members. So the missions were to, bomb their production things. The Air Force's policy was to hit the war-making things. Later on, when I read the history books, I see they had to change their policy because the British, namely Churchill himself, said, hey, to win a war, it's got to be brutal. You don't just go bomb the strategic targets because the war is not going to end until the population themselves rise and can take it anymore. And that's what the Germans are doing to us when they come and bomb. They don't come and bomb the Spitfire factory thing. They bomb the whole city. And so the targets we dropped on were military, but they'd be like that, or they're in the city. And in those days, our equipment wasn't as sophisticated as today. We dropped a lot of them through clouds. You didn't really see what you never saw the horror that might have been happening. The rest of a minute, one day reading that history book, I'm reading about a big firestorm bombing in one of the big cities in Germany, and I read about the 20,000 people that died, so sophisticated, couldn't breathe, blah, blah. And at this late stage, I thought, I'm sure glad I wasn't in something like that. I wouldn't want to know that. Not that it's war, that's what we're for. And I went up and looked up the record. Yeah, we've been on that mission too. We didn't know that.
How old were you at that time?
22. I was born in 1922, and I was assigned to a combat outfit from September 44 to June of 45, which was when the war ended.
So what happened to you when the war ended in 45?
Well, I decided I did not want to come back and become a prune picker and farm worker and et cetera, and I loved being a lieutenant, and I decided to stay in. Which to you the interest that the Air Force required that everybody announce those that wanted to stay in and those who wanted out, and fully 80% wanted out. One of my, tell you what you're thinking there, one of my good friends was a little American boy who wasn't like me. I hadn't even graduated from high school. This guy had graduated from high school, but no college. He was a lieutenant. And he asked to get out, and notice he hit me, he said, Ernie, don't you value freedom? He said, seriously, you're going to stay in and live a life where somebody tells you what to do and when to do it, and you really can live like that? And I do remember now in retrospect, and I'm not the greatest guy, as you can tell, speaking extemporaneously, I do remember my answer, and I think it was kind of right. I said, Bill, I think you and I come from 2 different worlds. I said, here, you're seeing this as an environment like that, like you say, where they tell you what to do, when to do it. I see it, I've never been so free in my life as I have as a lieutenant. My boss gives me the jobs, any job I can handle. I'm free and I'm getting good money. And when I was back, we were happy, but I worked, for a while, I was sole support for a short period of time of our family and only got $12 a week. I worked 2 hours a day for a Japanese farmer. I said, I don't know, it's a great life. I'm thinking, and then, I think I told you the rest after that, as time went on, I got a lot of interesting assignments. I was a real lucky guy all the time in the military. But I knew the handwriting was on the wall, and as soon as things simmered down, they're going to start kicking out officers, because there's too many of them. And obviously, one of the first to go will be those guys without any college. And that's when I decided, hey, I got to get an education, and I ended up going to contacting my high school in Escondido and asked them, and they gave me how do I get a diploma? And they said, well, take this exam and take this correspondence course. And I graduated got a college degree then. I tell my kids when I said, hell, I was 28 years old then, and a first lieutenant. And then I kept on later on in the 1950s and started going to off-duty schools, college, and eventually went the last semester at Sacramento State. Got a degree there in about 57, 60. And then the Air Force sent me to Stanford and got a master's there. So we did that. They got out in droves, and then they saw the outside as they got recalled in Korea. And now when the war in Korea ended, you got a reverse of what happened in World War II. Many of them elected to stay in. They suddenly found out today. Outside, they don't think you're some super guy just because you were in the military. They weren't out there fighting to give you a good job.
So you mean people who had left after World War II,
they
got
stayed in the
back.
reserve. Oh yeah, they got called back by the thousands. One of my own cousins was a young Marine. He was he got out of in fact he was in the Iwo Jima battles and whatnot. He got out. He came back, and this time he said he ended up fighting a combat tour in Korea and 2 tours in Vietnam, and stayed and retired as a master sergeant. So that was just intriguing,
So what do you, excuse me. So, as we wrap up this discussion, what do you have to say to the next generation of people that are out there?
Well, young guys, if you had a son and he says he's kind of interested in the military, I'd say, well, yeah, but if your dad had the money and the will, and go to college first and go and join the ROTC, serve, get your 4-year degree, and at the same time they'll make you a lieutenant when you get out, and that becomes your starting point in the military. Conversely, if you go in now and you're real good, you're probably lucky to have 2 or 3 stripes and go down. But either way, though, if you're poor, if your dad can't send you to school or whatever, join like Richard Huerta did, like Tommy Perez did. First of all, it is honorable to serve your country. It's a good thing. But secondly, it transformed America, not the Latinos. They did it to all the white guys. I don't know if you've noticed what they claim that how many of the vast majority of people in World War II, officers and otherwise, were not college graduates. And then out of schooling, or out of serving, when they got that, or they got loans for the impact of the Latino community. For the first time, you begin to see the Latinos buying houses in these other areas here and there because they got loans. So it was.
Talking about the GI loans.
So anyway, see today the military, that Afghanistan and Iraq stuff, it murder on a young fellow that, let's say, if you got a 23 or 4-year-old son or daughter married, and boom, they send you, or then all of a sudden, one of you stays behind, the financial costs and separations. However, we went through that. I did realize that like when I got married, I didn't see my wife for 7 or 8 months before she was able to get from England to America. And when she landed in New York looking for me, I was in Cali, Colombia. They told her, "Oh, your instructions are for you to go to San Jose, California." And so La Pobre English girl gets out here and finds a Mexican grandmother and a couple of my sisters, and she had to stay here 7 months before she could get transportation to Colombia. And then later we went to Panama, and then we're living in just temporary quarters. And boom, one day we get told that our outfit's going to go to the Berlin airlift. And that we're only going for 45 days. I left her in temporary quarters. She's just a young gal with my little young daughter. Fortunately for her, another girlfriend's husband got quarters and had lived. It was 8 months before I got back. See, those kind of things happen, which today I think to many marriages is devastating to lives. So in that sense, it's not all a bundle of roses, But I'm glad I went.
What did you
It was
do?
great for me.
What did you do in the Berlin airlift?
Well, I went over. I was a navigator in the troops. I went over as a navigator there, but I was not. They didn't fly navigators on the regular. I was a supply officer for our squadron. And then for 1 month, I was assigned the commander of the whole Berlin airlift organization. The general had a crew assigned to him permanently. They were given 30 days leave, and he was given a temporary crew, and I was assigned for those 30 days as a navigator on the crew. So, yeah, I wasn't. The Berlin airlift was pilots, they had the flying, and they didn't have navigators.
Where were you based?
At Frankfurt, Germany. And, then we just went back. Other than that, we came back, and my wife got to go. We came back to, eventually, varied assignments. And some nice ones as an instructor here in Sacramento was the Air Force Navigation School. I became an instructor there for a while. And later, when I ended up going to college and whether I got promoted up, I became the head of a management analysis division, 8 or 10 people for a couple of years. Went to Panama and ended up planning things or something, those kind of jobs. And then a real interesting, short-lived, but very memorable thing. I was assigned as the Air Force representative to the Hispanic thing, the guys that were running the war between El Salvador and Honduras. The war, I think you may remember, is a football war, supposedly. Very short-lived, only lasted a few days, killed about 5,000 people. But then there was continued shooting, killing, fighting. And the U.S. and an international group monitored and to get a plan going for ceasefire. And so I spent 6 weeks there just flying every day to go investigate a shooting and see what was happening. Then after that, I got assigned to Vietnam. It's my last assignment.
Where were you based in your Vietnam service?
All in Saigon. In fact, all in the city, the headquarters command was that we were unit, part of the headquarters, but we were in a little group that was supposed to help the 8 foreign countries supposedly given participating in the war, helping Australia, New Zealand, Republic of China, Korea, Spain had a medical missionary developed good friendships with them. remember our little headquarters had 8 flags.
What years were
I was
those?
there just 1 year, all of 1970. All of 1971. The last year of the war.
How'd you feel about the last year? Of the ending of the war? Were you there when it ended?
It ended, it began to end as we came home, yeah.
Could you see that was gonna happen when you left?
No, but,
Did you know it was that Saigon was gonna fall?
yeah, well, I don't know if it really, it didn't seem to fall fighting, I don't know. I think it was, in retrospect, I think it was probably an unnecessary war. Not a, I tell you, like, one thing of interest to you maybe, when I went there, I was 49 years old. Hey, I still had, I thought I was going to go to a bomb group and have one last flash of flying. And I wasn't assigned, I was assigned to a psychological warfare officer school. And I'm supposed to do that, be in the ground. But on the way there, by the time I got to my mother's house in San Jose, that had been changed. And I had been made the deputy chief of something called the Free World Military Assistance Office, little thing that catered to the. And I can tell you this, that after I got to see the people there and so on, I kind of thought of them like I would people in San Jose. I was glad I was not on the bomber crew. I thought, I feel about it. It just didn't seem to be the same. When we were fighting the Germans, we were fighting a highly trained, well-equipped. We were fighting people that were, really, really well, powerful. And I thought, to me, I feel about as much pride bombing East San Jose. So I wasn't sorry that I didn't have would we lose 50,000 people, 60? I don't know. Charlie Lostanel, got wounded there and spent a few months in a hospital.
Yes, I remember that.
You in touch with him still? I've got his address, but not his phone.
He moved to Sacramento area.
Well, a little north of San,
Somewhere up
small
there.
town.
Yeah. No, in fact, I'm gonna get that from you.
Okay, I'll go up and get it though.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up. Anything else?
No?
Thank you, Ernie.